Hello and welcome to the Nordic Football Podcast. I'm Steve Wiss and I'm joined by Jonathan Verdukber, and this is the last NFP episode of 2019. And what a year it's been.
Yes, indeed. Hi, everyone, and hi, Steve. The last Nordic Football Podcast of the decade. So goodbye to the 2010s and hello to the 2020s coming soon. But before that, we've got one final show to talk about all things Norway and Sweden. So, yeah, good to be with you, and I'm looking forward to getting into it.
Yeah, and
did you have a good Christmas?
Yeah, I was just going to say, happy Christmas, and hope you had a good one. And I would wish you happy New Year, but it's not the New Year yet. And it was okay. You know, it gets pretty hectic when I've got a couple of kids, and I wasn't very well. So if my voice goes a little bit in this episode, then that'll be the reason why. It just gets absolutely mental, doesn't it? December and Christmas. But I had a reasonably good time. Ate fairly well. Had a nice turkey, a few drinks around. Hope you had a good one yourself.
Yeah, I was on the Hogarden. It's a Nordic Football Podcast, but it's Belgian beer in my house. So a bit like all the Swedish players actually going off to Belgium. So in tribute to all of that, I was on the blonde Belgian beer, which was very nice indeed, and some turkey. But we're not here to discuss our Christmas dinners, are we, Steve? We're here to talk about the dogs' dinners, which was the relegation battle in Norway, where there was a huge shock, which is where we're going to start, isn't it? And I think the last time we spoke, we've had a few interviews in recent shows. Lecky James, the title winner with Mulder, and also Hasse Eklund, the Falkenberg manager. We've had quite a few really exclusive interviews of late, which you can delve into on Spotify, iTunes, or your usual place. But before that, we were talking about the incredible relegation battle, which involved 6 teams who could all go down on the final day. And we've had a big casualty, haven't we, Steve? And we're going to just touch on that first and wrap up Norway for the beginning of this podcast.
Yeah, I mean, I suppose you could say we've had 2 big casualties, really, because Tromsø obviously went down on the 1st of December, was the last round of the Eliteserien. And, I said all season, didn't I, that they would not go down under Simo Valakari, and I was wrong. They drew 1-1 against Stabæk. I don't know how they didn't win this game, to be honest. They threw the absolute kitchen sink at them in incredibly snowy conditions. I think the goalkeeper of Stabæk had a really great game. I mean, for those who backed over 2.5 goals in that game, they literally committed suicide. There was so many chances. Don't know how it ended 1-1. But Tromsø went down, which was I'll be honest, I was fairly disappointed because I like the club. I think it's a shame for that region that a club like them go down under a very good manager. And but we must congratulate those who did survive, especially Mjøndalen and Strømsgodset, who had a great 2 wins to end the year. And then the match that determined the final playoff position ended 0-0, Lillestrøm against Sarpsborg. And this was a game, it's like neither team wanted to win it. Lillestrøm were quite content to go for the 0-0. And it was a horrible game of football. And what happened was, after that 0-0 draw, they sacked their manager, Jürgen Lennartsen, who was Swedish ex-IFK Göteborg coach. As they sacked him, they brought in Tom Nordley just for the 2 games, the playoff matches against Start. But things sadly went pear-shaped.
Pear-shaped indeed for Lillestrøm. I've actually met the ex-Tromsø manager, when I was in Gothenburg. Seemed like a fair enough, nice chap, but he didn't have too much success there in Göteborg. And it looks like he's had a pretty rough time of things over in Norway. As you mentioned there, they really, they botched it, didn't they, Steve? They absolutely botched it. They won the first game at Start in the playoffs, 2-1 away from home. And you would have thought to yourself, well, they're going to be all right. But just tell us how that game panned out, the second leg at home against Start to stay up.
Well, it was the first leg was 2-1. Away goals count in this, by the way. So, that isn't the worst result in the world, is it? When you get an away goal, you lose 2-1, it's okay. Now, this match against Start was on a Wednesday night, and it just happened to be that evening. I didn't watch this game because I was out playing in my regular pool league, and I happened to be in a location in the Yorkshire Dales, which is literally cut off from everywhere. There's no mobile signal, there's no Wi-Fi, nothing. Right out in the sticks. So the last time I had a mobile signal, I think it was something like 3-0 to Lillestrøm. And I thought, they're safe, aren't they? They're going to get the job done. And I could not believe the result when I saw it later on. That they actually went 4-0 up. And then Martin Ramsland scored a 6-minute hat-trick for Start between the 76th and 82nd minute. That's absolutely ridiculous, isn't it? So on aggregate, Start go through on away goals. I mean, how you can blow a 4-0 lead to 4-3 in such a quick space of time is quite staggering, isn't it? So, I mean, absolutely remarkable. Saw the highlights of this, and I could not believe what I was seeing.
Yeah, 76th minute, 79th minute, and 82nd minute to stun Lillestrøm, who we've talked about before and said, are they too big to go down? I think on the last podcast where we talked about this, we said, we couldn't see them falling. Although, I mean, you did actually predict they'll go down, didn't you, I think, Steve, on that show?
Yeah,
but, not in this way. I don't think you thought they would be directly relegated, but this is some way to go down, isn't it? They were... Is it 6-2 up they were?
Yeah, it would be, let me think. There would be 5-2
up.
Yeah, 5-2 up on aggregate, yeah, with 14 minutes to go. But look, funny things can happen. I was watching Leeds United the other week against Cardiff City, 3-0 up with about, half an hour to go, or 3-1 up with 8 minutes to go, and it ended 3-3. But Leeds had amazing dominance in that game, and I was at a loss how to explain how it can happen. This was one of those where you look back and you think, how was it actually possible? But it only takes a second to score a goal in football, doesn't it? And I think as soon as they got one goal, then the pressure's on them. As soon as they get two, they're absolutely shitting themselves. And, it's remarkable football sometimes for it to happen this way. I had to say, I think they probably deserve to go down, though, John, based on the season as a whole. So, and it might even do the club some good. Who knows?
Yeah, and that's the beauty of football. I mean, looking at the stats, in fact, Lillestrøm edged the game in terms of XG, expected goals. They had 1.74 XG in the second leg versus Start's 0.75 XG. But who cares about expected goals when all that matters is the goals that you get? Because a 4-3 win is irrelevant when they've conceded 3 in terms of away goals. So it really is a stunning story to go down in that way. What was the reaction from the club in general, Steve? What's been said? Because I mean, that is some collapse, isn't it?
Shock, horror. The fans. I don't think they could believe what they were seeing on the actual day itself. But I think going into the two-legged playoff affair, certainly fans would not have expected to stay up necessarily. I think they saw it as a 50-50 sort of matchup. Start and not a bad side by any means. In fact, for the first leg of the playoffs, they were favourites to win at home against Lillestrøm, which is understandable. I think the second leg, Lillestrøm were quite a decent price with the bookmakers. So, this was expected to be quite two close ties. I do have to question a couple of things. I certainly don't think away goals should count in this matches. It really should go to extra time, in my opinion. And it's just far too late in the year now for these matches. 11th of December, for Christ's sake. I mean, it's just, for a place like Norway, it's too late in the year. And, random things can happen. But, for Lillestrøm, obviously, it's a bit of blow. But look at the sides that this has happened to before. They've gone down. In Brann, it happened to them 2014, 2015. Look, they should be far too big to stay in the Obos-ligaen for very long. I mean, even Viking went down in a crisis and came back and won the division, didn't they? So I would fully expect Lillestrøm to absolutely cruise promotion next year and maybe reset the club a bit. Might do them some good. Yeah,
I mean, this is a massive story in terms of the context of Norwegian football, really, in terms of Lillestrøm, who I have to say I'm not a massive fan of over the last few years. we haven't really talked about them a huge amount. They've not really pulled up many trees, really, have they? And let's be fair, I'm not sure if we'll miss them next season, to be honest, given the way they've been going. There was a lot of undesirable actions that happened after the game, isn't there? There was, I think, some ugly scenes with the fans after the match. But, well, the Start coach came out and said after I've never been involved in anything like this. You only experience this kind of thing once in a lifetime. Whereas Tom Nordley said anxiety grabbed us. When it became 4-2, there was complete panic. And panic is exactly what took place and has sent them down. But yes, from what I understand as well, it got a little bit ugly. Fans tried to get to the into the dressing room to make their disappointments known, maybe to the players. Fans, I think some of them tried to attack various players, although in the end there was no arrests made. But some people were rejected from the game. And yeah, this is Lillestrøm's first relegation in 53 years. So yeah, I mean, his comments after the match, this is an empty feeling. I must take my share of responsibility. LSK and I must put ourselves in this situation, congratulate Start, and rebuild. It's the heaviest day of my time, and it's going to burn me for a while. So yeah, gutting for Lillestrøm. What about Start, Steve? Because they were in the Eliteserien not too long ago, but I mean, their captain, Erlend Segberg, described it as a miracle and said, we're a fantastic bunch. To come back with 15 minutes left, what does it mean for the city, and what do you expect from them next season, maybe?
Yeah, the problem is they're a sort of side who you worry about long term because they're like a yo-yo club. I mean, they came up last year, but I mean, they never seem to have that many fans go in their stadium, and they need to look at that squad. I'll have to look at that squad in the new year and sit and make up my mind whether I think it's good enough to stay up. Last time they came up, of course, there was high expectations, wasn't they, that they were going to be a dark horse, and things kind of fell flat on their arse a bit. It'll be interesting to see if they've learned their lesson before of why they went down, what went wrong, and maybe put it right this time. But they were clearly the third best side in the Obos-ligaen. I think Sandefjord and Ålesund were a lot better than them, so they've got a bit of catching up to do in that respect. So, but no, well done to them for coming back. I mean, it's kind of a freak, but you just wonder whether they're actually ready for a promotion again or not. But they're up there, and they've got to make the most of it.
Yeah, and a player who was key for them, Aaron Sigurdarsson, he was very instrumental. Former Tromsø player as well. He seemed to be very good, 13 goals, and also provided 8 assists, which is pretty impressive. I think, I remember we did talk about Start when they came up, and there wasn't really expectation that they would go down, really, were there? It was kind of expected that they would do, in fact, quite well. But they did go back down, and now they're back up. They had the second best expected goals in the league last season, so maybe they can build on that. But as you mentioned, Ålesund and Sandefjord as well will be there. So yes, and unfortunately for the Lillestrøm fans, they will have to spend next season in the second tier. And I guess like last season, we won't be talking about them too much. But let's move on now. I mean, as I said, Smorisson, in fact, one of the players of Lillestrøm, described it as like a funeral and said, this is a responsibility we have to take and everyone is sorry, but we'll leave it there for Lillestrøm for now and see how they rebuild. Maybe it will cleanse them and they can come back stronger. But yeah, moving on, Steve, what was your overall view of the season? I mean, let's wrap it up now, just to give the listeners maybe who don't maybe know about our Twitter page. We have a partnership with Y Scout over the past of the season, which has been very fruitful and enjoyable, to be honest. I've really enjoyed it, delving into the stats. And one of our final pieces for this season was to select our team of the season, combining Sweden and Norway. So we're going to have a little delve into that now, Stephen, just wrap the season up in general. I mean, before we touch on the 11 players who've made our combined 11, what was your overall view of this Norwegian season? Have you enjoyed it? I remember in one of the preview shows, you were a little bit grumpy, weren't you? You said that you thought a lot of the quality has gone out of the league, and you were a little bit down on the Eliteserien. But what's your overall take on this year, with Molde being so successful and such an incredible, end to the season in terms of relegation? Have you enjoyed the year, and what's your take on it?
Me being grumpy, what are you on about? But look, I stand by that. Yeah, the quality in the league is not as much. I did enjoy the season in its own way. I think especially the excitement down the bottom of the table there, obviously culminating in this relegation battle on the last day, which was really having everyone on the edge of their seats. And I also really enjoyed the story of Bodø Glimt at the top of the table there, defying expectations and eventually finishing a great second place. But, obviously it was a bad year for the big clubs like Rosenborg, Brann. I mean, I expected the likes of Sarpsborg to be up there in contention. I think overall it was a little bit of a flop at the top there, but some good stories. Viking, obviously, winning the NM Kupen there and things like that. But yeah, it was okay. It was all right. It had its moments, good and bad points.
And we have a question from This Is Liam before we get into the team of the season. Biggest overachievers in your respective leagues, as you just touched on it there, in terms of teams who let you down or impressed. Who were the biggest overachievers in your opinion? Bodø Glimt, would you say?
Yeah, easily Bodø Glimt and Viking. Definitely, no question about it whatsoever. Bodø Glimt were predicted to be relegated by a lot of people, certainly in the bottom 3 or 4 or 5. I think I only had them about 10th, 9th or 10th. And Viking, I think the Viking, there was a lot more optimism, but to actually finish 5th and win the cup is a stratospheric season of overachievement, in my opinion.
Yeah, they've been magnificent. And I think just to answer Liam, for me, the biggest overachievers in Sweden, it's a tough question, actually. I think a lot of the teams who do well kind of were really expected to do well. So maybe AFC Eskilstuna getting to the cup final was big, but they didn't offer too much in the league. I suppose Djurgården, you can't really look past Djurgården in terms of ending their title drought. It wasn't really expected. I think in the preseason podcast I had them about 4th or 5th. Nobody really predicted them to win it. So I'd probably say they're the biggest overachievers. That you can't do much better than winning the title, can you, when you're not expected to? So yeah, I'm going to say Djurgården with a little shout out to AFC Eskilstuna, just from the point of view of getting to that cup final, which was quite unexpected.
And what about maybe Falkenberg as a slight overachiever?
Yeah, that's a fair point. And we interviewed Hasse Eklund, and obviously, to be honest, did they actually overachieve? Because for 29 games, they were absolutely rock bottom. Never seen anything. I mean,
they avoided direct relegation, didn't they? So,
that is the serious equivalent of handing in your homework, 1 minute before the deadline, for your coursework or something, isn't it? Just staying up all night and doing it, bashing it out in 3 hours and handing it in and not studying at all for the whole term, because they really were toast for large periods of the season with one of the worst goal differences, worst goal scoring records, worst goals conceded, and just rocked up in the last minute of the last second of the season.
And what about a
90th minute?
A big underachiever. I mean, in Norway, for me, it has to be Sarpsborg or Vålerenga. Quite clearly, those two were the sides that should be doing an awful lot better this year. I don't know about Sweden.
Underachievers? I think I'd have to say... Yeah, it's a tough one, because, I mean, if you look at it in terms of just pure places in the table, Ostersund's finished 12th and they've had that massive scandal. So they've dropped quite a bit from where they, have been in recent years. But I suppose the off-field things makes it hard to maybe be too harsh on them. Underachievers, I think Kalmar, they usually don't flirt with relegation. They usually just do enough to finish 11th or 12th. But this season, they just about escaped with the playoffs against, the relegation playoff. GIF Sundsvall as well. They were so good last year, finished 7th and now relegated. So probably, GIF Sundsvall, I would say. And I was disappointed with Kalmar this season as well, I think.
Yeah, good calls there. So we're going to talk about this combined Allsvenskan and Eliteserien Team of the Year that we did on the Wisecout blog now. And let's get into it. We've gone with the... there's a few...
Should we unveil the... Do you want to unveil the Norway and I unveil the Sweden, or vice versa?
Yeah, let's start. Well, let's start at the back. The goalkeeper, and Well, I have to say, in Norway, if I was going to pick a goalkeeper, it would have been Sandberg from Stavanger, who was, for me, the clear best keeper in the Eliteserien this year. But he wasn't, I would call, anything really special. I think the candidate we've chosen was clearly the best one, and it's from Sweden, John.
Yeah, I've gone for Isaac Pettersson from Norrköping, a team that I had tipped for big things at the start of the year, but didn't quite live up to the hype. Ended up 9 points off the title in 5th. Although I still think they had a pretty creditable season, but just maybe didn't capitalise on the momentum, and obviously lost Jordan Larsson, their top scorer, mid-season, obviously going to Russia and doing quite well in Moscow. But yeah, I've gone for Pettersson. He was voted the goalkeeper of the year in the Allsvenskan. He's been called up to the national team as well for Sweden. And to be honest, I was very I've been impressed with him for quite a few years, and I've spoken to some scouts as well around Europe, and they just about Sweden in the past, and his name's come up, and I think he impresses a lot of people, and I think he's going to have a decent career ahead of him. He's only 22. His save percentage was 79%, and he faced a lot more shots than the best save percentages were, I believe, Tommy Vaiho and the Malmo keeper, if I remember rightly. But in terms of actual shots faced, they faced way less shots than Pettersson, who was tested a lot more in the Norrköping goal due to their inferior defence. But he kept nobody kept more clean sheets than him this year in the league, and he, as I say, 3rd in the shots percentage. He's only got a year left in his contract, so that'll be an interesting one in this winter window. Where does he go next? Could he move on? I think there's a very good chance that he will move on to a bigger league at some point. If you remember, a few years back, the IFK Göteborg keeper ended up at Watford. He's not really pushed on since. He's been playing, under 23s football and that kind of thing. I hope that's not the fate for Pettersson, because I hope he can go to maybe a league where he can play. But yeah, I think he's going to be one that you'll hear about more in the future as well. He's a very impressive goalkeeper. We've gone for a back 3, haven't we? I don't know if you wanted to say something else.
Yeah, I was just going to say maybe he could be the next Andreas Isaacson or something like that. Who knows down the line, Pettersson. But yeah, I mean, this back 3, I don't call it a back 3. It's just we picked the 3 best defenders, I think, because we had a problem here that we just couldn't decide on a sort of a second centre-back, could we, John? The clear standout centre-back in this is obviously Marcus Danielsson from Djurgården, but he's joined in this defensive trio by Witry and also Fredrik Björkan from Buda Glimt. So, I mean, we've talked about the DIF defence a lot this year, and one more last time, that you feel that Danielsson and Witry were the 2 real standouts from that back line.
Yeah, I mean, obviously Elliot Shesh and Jacob Une-Larsson did well, but you can't rule out Marcus Danielsson has to be in there. Absolutely no doubt about that. He won the MVP of the year in Allsvenskan, and he won the Defender of the Year as well. So he cleaned up at the awards, picking up all the trophies there, and picked up the main trophy, the SM Guld. So at the end of the day, Danielsson, his career arc has really gone sky high, to be honest. I mean, I remember pointing him out in 2017, the year before he joined DIF, Djurgården, when he was a GIF Sundsvall, and I remember thinking he's a player who could go on. He was a really towering figure in that GIF Sundsvall defence, but I didn't expect him to go to this sort of lengths in terms of captaining his side to the title. He came up with some clutch goals. Really clutch, two title-winning goals, really. 2-1 win away at Östersunds, and a 1-0 win against Kalmar as well. 2 bullet headers from corners. Obviously, with it being so tight at the top, 1 point settled the title in the end. Those kind of goals were really clutch. And just in general, he brought a sort of calmness to the defence as well as aggression when needed. A real captain in terms of his leadership, and fully deserves it, to be honest. He won 68% of aerial duels. And he's not the quickest, but everything he did was calm and assured, and fully deserves his place in that team, in my opinion. Aslak Witry, I've chosen him just because his record in terms of assists was very impressive. I've called him the Alexander Arnold of Allsvenskan, purely because he gets up and down. It's weird, isn't it? Because you didn't really rate him in Norway.
I wouldn't say it wasn't a case that I didn't rate him. I think it was just I just didn't see him going on to this level at Djurgården. Really, I saw a player with some potential, but quite raw in a way. But I certainly could not have envisaged this massive step up. I really think that he's been really well coached at Diff.
Yeah, he's been fantastically well coached, and the Djurgården success is really a coaching thing, really, because their squad is probably. It's very good, but it's, player for player, you'd probably favour Malmo or maybe even Hammarby or ALK, to be honest. But everyone pulled their weight. I mean, Elliot Shesh, the left back, got more assists, so there's an argument that maybe I should have, included him. But I think in terms of the defensive statistics from Witry, he did a lot. He also scored 4 goals, 0.89 key passes per 90 minutes. It is very impressive at this level. So all in all, I think he deserved his place. And then we've got Bjorkan, haven't we, a Norwegian player. What did you like about him, Steve?
Yeah, I mean, I'll be honest with you, the cupboard is pretty bare this year, in my opinion, for Eliteserien defence, team of the year candidates in defence. I couldn't, if you asked me to name a right back, for example, I really couldn't choose one. I think that no one was particularly special. Centre back the same. I think Bjorkan probably may well have been the best defender in the league this year. To be fair, there wasn't much in it with the left back at Molde, Christopher Hagen, who did well. But I like Bjorkan. He a really energetic player, good technically, good defensively. Actually, one of his key statistics was a really good dribbling success rate, 67.8% dribbling success, which is the 6th best rank in the entire league. So he knows how to beat a man, doesn't he, on the left-hand side? And he weighed in with a few assists, a few goals as well. I think he probably could have had more goals and should have had more assists if they had converted chances a bit better. Just, I think, really good balance between defence and attack, and he improved physically and technical this year. And, it was only fair that, Bodø Glimt were one of the great stories of the Eliteserien. I think it was only fair they had a couple of players in this team, really.
Yeah, they were magnificent, and we interviewed his dad, didn't we?
We did, yeah. I mean, you interviewed him there at the Y Scout Forum, and nice fella, and they are a fantastic story. And I just hope that going forward they can really build on that success. They'll bring some great youngsters through the ranks at Bodø Glimt. Nice system there, and Bjorkan is certainly one of the success stories, and he may well depart this winter. He's had such an eye-catching campaign; it wouldn't surprise me in the slightest.
Yeah, one player I just wanted to pick out as well for an honourable mention, perhaps. I think, although he's not made the cut here, I think Simon Sandberg for Hammarby has had an excellent season as well, the right back. Witry, I think, edges it because he had less key passes per 90 than Sandberg, Witry had 0.086 and Sandberg had 0.096. But Witry's slightly younger. I think he offers a little bit more. He offered a little bit more defensively and also scored 4 goals. But yeah, Sandberg was really also very impressive in an excellent Hammarby team. And maybe they could feel like they're unlucky not to have more players in this team in the season, to be honest. But we didn't pick all of them, did we, Steve? Because if we move on to the midfield now, who have we got?
Yeah, I mean, we've got. I think the one of the reasons we only picked 3 defenders is because there were so many good midfielders and attackers this year in the league. So, I mean, we've really effectively picked 5 midfielders, haven't we? So, Tankovic, Trippic, Yusuf, Evian, and Magnus Wolf Eikram as the 5 there. And I suppose our kickers off. I might as well start with Håkan Evian, who's obviously moving to AZ Alkmaar. Talked a lot about him this year, so I don't want to drone on, but we're fantastic talent and so many good things this year. Spectacular goals, spectacular assists. It's been a constant driving force for them. And, if you want a bit of an underrated statistic from Evian, that he actually won 62% of his defensive duels, which is more than anyone in the entire league. So the sheer energy to track back and actually, engage with these players and actually win a ball is something that you perhaps don't think of with Evian. But he did have a history as a left back, I do believe. And although at one point there was rumours that he was a right back in his younger days, which was squashed by our man up there in Bodø Glimt, Tom Dent. But yeah, you can tell he did have a slight history in defence, and but obviously going forward, we're going to be seeing him in the Dutch league on the wing, or maybe probably as an attacking midfielder, central playmaker. Absolute talent. I think he can go all the way to the top.
Well, I think, yeah, this is going to be the last, I imagine, one of the last times we'll talk about Håkon Evjen. I can't see him coming back to Norway or Sweden anytime soon. So to wrap it up, I mean, just talk quickly about the AZ Alkmaar move and, you know, his impact in general. How do you think he'll go on in his career? I know we talked about it a little bit before, but just very briefly, how do you think he'll go on from here? And, you know, how do you see him getting on in the Netherlands?
I think it's a really good fit for a league for him, because that is such an offensive league, isn't it? You know, defenses often have trouble there. Attack-minded coaches, you get 3-4-3 formations, don't you? Things like that. He's going to have a field day over there, I think. You know, he's going to have his way. I mean, the one downside is perhaps, you know, in the Dutch league, there's a lot more pacey players, isn't there? So he's not going to be outrunning everyone like he did in Norway. But, you know, he's got the technical ability. He's improved his physique. He seems to be over his injury problems. And as long as he has a nice, good little break, you know, in this month or two, I think he can really hit the ground running over there in Holland. And honestly, I could see him getting a move to a bigger league after that. Whether or not he will have the physicality for the Premier League, I don't know. That will depend if he develops that in the next year or two. Yeah,
I mean, he's only young. I mean, I think one thing I like about him moving to AZ Alkmaar, they've got a lot of good players there. They've got Myron Boadu, they've got Calvin Stengs. Their youth development is really looking sharp at the moment, and they're pulling out some really good results.
Yeah, they're in a title battle, aren't they? I couldn't believe that when I looked the other day.
Say that again?
They're in a title battle, aren't they? I mean,
it doesn't surprise me. The way they played against Hacken, I mean, Myron Boadu against Hacken in the Europa League qualifier, he really stood out to me there. He will go on for a good 20 million, in my opinion, somewhere else eventually. So I'm not surprised. They've got other good players, Koop Myers, I believe. So I think it's actually a really good move for Evjen. I think it's a perfect signing, to be honest. But yeah, let's move on. We got holding up the midfield there. The kind of Kante role, perhaps, is Al Hassan Yusuf from EFK Göteborg. I don't know if you ever got to see much of him at all, Steve.
I was just going to say that this is the one player in this 11 that I really don't know anything about. I actually had him in my Allsvenskan fantasy team all year, and he scored me a few points. But yeah, I mean, I've read about him obviously on the blog here, and he sounds a really interesting player that has had a great year.
Well, you've done very well to get him in your team. I mean, he's been very, very impressive. A really impressive signing. Picked up a bit randomly, to be honest, and ended the season on fire. So you'd have enjoyed the last game of the season because he got 2 goals in a 7-1 win for EFK against Östersund. In fact, which were I think they were his only goals of the whole season. So you would have enjoyed that one. But in general, the 19-year-old has had an exceptional season, to be honest. He's linked with Wolves now. Wolves are monitoring him. He was signed from the Gothia Cup from a random team in Cameroon, I believe, Tiki Taka development squad, the Nigerian. And EFK saw him in a game and were like, right, give that guy a contract. And it's proved to be a genius bit of scouting, really. He's won the Allsvenskan Young Player of the Season award. As I say, he's been likened to Kante a little bit. I think he's actually, I mean, he's nowhere near, I'm not saying he's anywhere near Kante's level, but his level of intricate play in terms of pass completion and that he's maybe not as tenacious a tackler, but his ability to intercept, his ability to pass, 91% completion rate, 78% forward completion rate as well, which I think is really good, progressive passing. He's got an all-action kind of style about him. And yeah, he's going to be another one who I think, you know, EFK this season, the story of EFK's season really was young players doing really, really well and then moving on. And maybe too soon in some cases. But I think could be another one. At least Yusuf's seen out the season. I'm happy about that. He's at least played 1 year in Sweden, and he could be on his way again quite soon because he will be attracting clubs for sure.
Yeah, he looks a really interesting prospect. Hopefully they can keep him for another year, but it may be in doubt. And I mean, I'll move on to another player now. I just wanted to point out that Håkon Evjen did win the Eliteserien Player of the Season award. He beat Magnus Wolf Eikram to that privilege. And we do include Wolf Eichram in this team in the attacking midfield role, sort of number 10. And really it's because he was just totally exceptional, certainly from April to July. He really dominated the league in that period. Sort of injuries took over maybe second half of the year, and he didn't seem as physically capable as he could be. But he's an absolute passing wizard. He ranked number 1 in the Eliteserien for key passes, smart passes, through passes, and also deep completions. So, look, an absolute technical wizard at Eliteserien level, and I think you could probably say he's the best player in the league at the moment. And I think probably the good thing for Mulder, he's not really going to be going anywhere, I don't think, particularly. But he had to be included in this team because of such an exceptional first, certainly 2/3 of the year.
Fantastic stuff. And we've got quite a few Norwegian Eliteserien players in our midfield, haven't we? Because we've got another one who I'll let you introduce from Viking. Yeah,
I think we both agree that this is a really strong area for both leagues, actually, in midfield. And I think there'll be 3 or 4 players missing out on this team who could feel very unfortunate, certainly from a Norwegian perspective, guys like Hestad and Tronstad at Haugesund. But I had to go with Zlatko Tripic from Viking. He just had a great year out there on the wing, on the left-hand side of midfield. He's 2-footed. He's the captain. I think he drove them on in a mental way, but also technically. He had a great year, did Tripic. Just 5 goals and 6 assists. But, there was a lot more to his game than that. He was rested quite a bit when they had a good cup run. I don't think he particularly stood out in any statistical category. But that's what happens when you change the team quite a lot. And he's one of those players who's just got a great all-round game, strong physically, good technically, and as I said, inspirational leader as well. So, I felt he was a big part of getting Viking into the top 5 and winning that Norwegian Cup. And, there were those that would say that he could even have been a candidate for player of the season up there. I mean, for me, it was clearly between Evjen and Wolf Eichram, but Tripic certainly would be a clear top 5 player in the whole league.
Fantastic stuff. Let's move on to the next man in line.
And it's a Allsvenskan player here to finish off the midfield. And you had to pick someone from Hammarby in this team, really, didn't you?
Well, there's quite a few I could have picked from Hammarby, to be honest. I think they're probably slightly unlucky not to have more than one player. In fact, you could have had the whole midfield really to a certain extent. I mean, you've got players like Kakanitslic, who was outstanding. I mentioned Samba before as the right back. He was very, very good. Nikola Djurdjic as well, who's missed out up front. There's a lot of good players that we could have in this team, but I've gone for Miro Matankovic. I think that it's pretty straightforward as to why. You can't do much better than 14 goals and 7 assists. More contributions to that goals than any other player in the league. The 24-year-old, 2.97 shots per 90 is top 10 in the league. And from a midfield position, that's quite impressive in my opinion. Paulinho, the Brazilian, was top with, I think, 4 shots per game, but that's as a striker who everything goes to him. Tankovic, his creativity, his all-round play was very, very impressive. I think this was the year he really kind of stepped up, to be honest, and made a name for himself. I've always been a little bit dubious about Tankovic in terms of, is he consistent enough? I remember him in his Fulham days. And then he went to the Netherlands, didn't quite do it there. And you always had, he kind of came back to Sweden with his tail between his legs, really, in my opinion. Almost hadn't really made it, considering all the hype. But this was the year where he really sort of showed that, he's got his head down and he wants to progress, to be honest. And I hope he does progress. Genoa have been linked with a move. Although a lot of the time I kind of say it'd be nice to see players stay in Allsvenskan, to be honest, I'd actually like to see Tankovic head on and move out, because he shouldn't really have come back, in my opinion. He's got the quality. So the challenge for him now is just to keep that consistency and go from there and push on in his career, really. At 24, he's at the midway point now. So he should be kind of moving on and doing well. He's got into the Sweden squad as well, so he'll be happy with that, I suppose. And yeah, good luck to him, and let's see how he goes from here. the move hasn't been completed yet, as far as I'm aware. But there is strong rumours he will not see out. He won't be there next season. So yeah, well done to him, and I'm happy for him.
You can understand that, and
just one thing on Hammarby. Sorry, by the way, just to recap: 75 goals scored. Incredible amount of goals. 22 more than Djurgården, who won the league. That is some doing.
Yeah, like you said, there were quite a few candidates from Hammarby really that were perhaps unfortunate to miss out in this team, but there was a lot of good midfielders and attacking sort of players around both leagues this year, I would say. And but we have gone with just two strikers, and they are Turgil Berven and Mohamed Buya-Toure. So I'll start us off with Berven because he was the highest scorer of the two with 21 goals, the top Eliteserien scorer. And, this was certainly a surprise to me and a surprise to a lot of people, really, because, pre-season there were doubts about whether he'd even be a starter. In fact, he was being retrained as sort of a midfielder, I do believe, at this time last year. But an injury to Helmerson for odd up front meant that he had to lead the line for them, and he certainly delivered with 21 goals. Had an expected goals of 14.25, so he overachieved that, and made a remarkable improvement. And well done to Berven, 21 goals, and he deserves his place in the team.
Yeah, fantastic stuff. You didn't really expect him to achieve that, did you? I think he's kind of overachieved, hasn't he, as a player this year?
Well, definitely. I mean, look, this is a player who'd never in his whole career even reached double figures in terms of goal scoring for a campaign. And, there was a time as a youngster, in his early 20s where, he was seen as this promising talent. I think he ended up for a move to Holland. It didn't work out. And, for the last couple of years before this one, he looked pretty crap, to be brutally honest with you, John. And I think even his own manager had given up on him as a striker to lead the line. That's why they're retraining him. I can't put my finger on what on earth happened, but he was really clinical with, I would call him as a complete striker, strong all-round game, great in the air. And I just think he technically got better this year. I can't explain it sometimes. Even when he was scoring goals at the start of the year, I was like, this will not last. Logically, he cannot continue it, but he did. And sometimes you've got to accept in any sport that certain players will prove you wrong, and he did with me.
Yeah, and just before we move on, a bit of a shout out as well to Lecky James, a special guest on our last show, an exclusive interview with him, because he actually matched Turgil Berven for non-penalty goals, if you take penalties out of it, with 16 apiece, with a slightly lower XG, 12.26. So I suppose statistically, you could argue Lecky James was maybe as good as Berven from an XG point of view, and matched him for non-penalty goals. So yeah, congratulations to him, and two others that I just want to point out as well. On Owe Onwewenfo with 12 non-penalty goals, and Pellegrino, Christiansen, Armal Pellegrino, who had 10 non-penalty goals. Those were the top four in terms of non-penalty goals. If you take penalties out of it.
With Lecky James, didn't even start any of the first 10 games, John. So imagine if he had done that, he probably would have cruised the Golden Boot, wouldn't he? I mean,
well, you're right. He played 1,113 less minutes than Berven, in fact. So that's quite phenomenal, really, to be fair to Lecky James. So yeah, a bit of a shout out to him. And obviously, if you want to listen to that podcast, then please do subscribe and go back and listen to it. We'd love you to do so. Subscribe and tell all your friends. But let's move on to the final player, Steve. Do you want to do the honours? A player that I very much enjoy.
It's a player that we've talked about on Nordic Football Podcast for quite a while, even back in the day before he joined Djurgården. But Mohamed Buya-Toure completes the lineup, and I know you were a really massive fan of him this year, weren't you?
Yes, I've been a fan of him since I saw him play for AFC Eskilstuna, I think in 2016, in the second division of Sweden, the Superettan, in a team that got promoted, part of a very exciting team at the time, Ferid Ali, and I think there were a few others in there that I really enjoyed watching. But yeah, Mr. Buya-Toure, it's going to be a shame to see him leave, because Djurgården have officially confirmed via a tweet that he will not be returning. He's on loan, obviously, from St. Troiden in Belgium, came back after a bit of an unsuccessful spell there, and fired Djurgården to the title. He will always have a place in the hearts of Djurgården fans off the back of this season. His goal total, fantastic strike rate. He scored the goals to secure the title, obviously, in the last day of the season against Norrköping. And he was a standout player in attack, really. His pace, his aggression, his finishing as well. Some counter-attacking goals, fantastic. Malmo away will always stick in my mind. The counter-attacking goal and the first-time finish on the break, which secured them a 1-0 win in that game, which effectively sealed the title, really, in hindsight. 15 goals, Sierra Leone international, a really, really impressive player. Very eccentric, a bit crazy at times. In fact, he made the BBC Sport website in the last few weeks because he said that a teammate had put juju on him. And that was why he had to miss one of the international friendlies for Sierra Leone. And he said, I promise I'll get my own back, which sounded very Agatha Christie-like, to be honest, promising revenge on a suspected witch doctor within the squad, which is, like, you can't make up some of the stuff that comes out of Mr. Buya Touré's mouth. But a real character in the league. I think the league will miss him in terms of his personality as well as his ability. So it's a shame to see him go, but he goes with a league title under his belt and a place in Djurgården history.
In the description of him in the Wisecout blog, the only real standout player in the Allsvenskan this season, according to one scout that we spoke to, and that just shows how good he was in the Allsvenskan this year.
Yeah, it's true. I have to make a bit of a correction there because I got told off for this. The person in question read the blog and said that he felt that he was actually the only standout striker, not the only standout player. So, just have to correct myself there on that. A bit of a misquote there. But, in terms of strikers, he was probably one of the best. Rosenborg as well. Marcus Rosenborg could is retiring as well. He can go out with his head held high, the 37-year-old. Robin Sorda with 14 non-penalty goals. That's the same as Buya Touré. He did well for EF Core. But, ultimately, I think Buya Touré was the best striker in the league this season.
Yeah, well, that's the 11. The Allsvenskan and Eliteserien combined team of the year that we've done, and I guess roll on 2020 now.
Yeah, let us know your thoughts as well at Nordic Football on Twitter if you disagree or agree with our choices. We've already had a few comments, various things. The formation on the blog itself is obviously a little bit out because we haven't had some comments on the structure of the team, and obviously we're not building a side to challenge for the title or anything here. We're just picking our favourite players and best players. A few players have missed out. Anders Christensen, I think, at Malmo is a bit unlucky. But in general, I think that's a really solid team, to be honest. And I think they might even be able to challenge a few of the teams in Denmark, Steve?
Yeah, it's just these sort of teams of the year are all very subjective, and there's loads of different opinions going around, and always respect those. And I know there was a few comments about the formation. I know Ben Wells was questioning why Trippic was in centre midfield, which is perfectly right. I think that might have been maybe an administrative error there in position, but yes, a very a good-looking lineup, and exciting. That would certainly be a very exciting team. I'll say that, and a good way to round off the year.
Fantastic stuff. Let's move on to the final part of this show, I suppose, where we wrap up and look ahead to 2020. We've got some listener questions, and we just want to say a very big thank you to our, what is it now, Steve? I think it's 1,418 followers on Twitter and many more on Facebook as well, where we've been a little bit less active, but no less grateful to anyone following us at Nordic Football. And yes, very thankful to you all. So thank you very much for listening throughout the course of this year. We really appreciate any comments and your support. Please do tell everyone and rate the podcast and subscribe and that kind of thing on iTunes and wherever you get them. But we have had some listener questions for this final show, which we'll run through now from some season ticket holders, I suppose, of the podcast. A few familiar names will crop up here, but as this is Liam, indeed, from earlier. Thank you for your support. Steve, I'll start you off with one from the 94th minute, who asks, of the promoted teams in the Allsvenskan and Eliteserien, looking forward to 2020, who do you think has the best chance of staying up next year, and why? Do you want to field that one for the Eliteserien before I give my answer?
Well, I must point out again, I don't follow the Obosligaen. I just don't really. I mean, obviously I keep my eye on it, but I'm not an expert on what the teams coming up are like. But I do know Arlesund fairly well as a club. They were only down there, for a couple of years, and they're a decently supported outfit and well managed by Lars Bohinen, who he came up with Sandefjord last time, and he managed to keep them in the league fairly comfortably. So I would imagine Ålesund, I mean, they completely dominated Obosligaen. I think it was even a record points tally. You've got to think they've got the best chance of survival. But, Sandefjord are back up again, and I think they're pretty well managed. So I think, both of those two sides will have every chance of certainly staying up and, maybe even being a dark horse like Viking again and pushing into the top half of the table.
Fantastic stuff. And yeah, thank you to the 94th minute for your question. I think my answer for this, I'm going to have to say, well, there's only 2 new teams next season because obviously Kalmar have managed to conquer their relegation fears and see off IK Braga, which I have to say, by the way, IK Braga, how unlucky are they? Not only did they miss out on promotion narrowly by, 1 point, I think. Automatic promotion by 1 point, which was very unlucky for them. Not only did that happen, and then they lost the relegation playoff, but they've also had the ignominy of being promoted when it was announced that Östersunds would be getting relegated due to their financial situation. And the Swedish Football Federation, in fact, published the fixture list for next year with IK Braga in it before the appeal had even taken place. So Östersunds obviously appealed it, and then the decision went in their favour. So IK Braga actually had a full fixture list for the Allsvenskan next season, and then a week or less than a week later had it taken away from them. So back to the Superettan they go. So unlucky to them. But from the 2 teams who did go up, which is Mjällby and Varberg boys, well, obviously Mjällby have won the title, so I suppose you'd have to look at them as the favourite to do well. But I happen to think that Varberg might be a bit of a dark horse next season in terms of maybe pulling out a few upsets and a few good results. I quite like their squad. Obviously, they're not too far from Göteborg, in that town of Varberg. And I think they nearly got relegated to the 3rd division last year, but they've recovered this year and turned it around incredibly. They've got a player that I do really like who was at Tvackers called Perperin Bekaj. I remember seeing him in a pre-season game once, and I thought he could move on. I think he was in the 4th division at the time. He's gone there and done quite well for them. And they've got quite a few other good players. They've got a decent academy. And yeah, they have some other star players. Keenan Ayer, I think, will be one to watch next season, the South African. He's not a bad player. And in general, they have some exciting players. If they can build, and I've seen they've made a few signings already. Serge Mani as well, got 15 goals in the league. He was the 3rd top scorer. I think if they can build and keep some of their players, Bekaj, as I mentioned there, he got 6 assists, then they might be able to shock a few. But we've talked about it before. The gap between the Allsvenskan and the elite and the Superettan is sometimes quite worrying in terms of teams just struggling to do anything but fight for relegation when they come up. So we'll see how that goes.
That's my concern, and this always seems to happen, that the teams that come up do absolutely nothing. I mean, even Helsingborg didn't have a great year, did they? And a lot was expected of them. But I mean, I was just looking at the Superettan table. I mean, the points tally for the sides that went up was not particularly great. Mjällby lost 7 matches. It seemed to me like perhaps the better teams in the division didn't get going until it was too late. It looks like sort of Jönköping, Degerfors, Halmstad, maybe were actually the better teams in that league, but for one reason or other, didn't manage to get themselves in the top 3. Probably a lot of it due to a bad start, but good luck to both of them. I do hope that we see them being quite competitive. That's my hope.
Yeah, and it will be interesting to see. I mean, I'm a bit sad for the teams that went down. AFC, I think they kind of deserved it, to be fair, but Gibson's, I am a bit sad for them. because I did really enjoy them. But yeah, let's move on. Thank you to the 94th minute. We're going to field another question now, which is from @NorFootball. And this is kind of related to the transfer window because there are deals being done already, Steve. And I know we go a bit dormant at this time of year, but we will have one eye on a few deals. And the question from @NorFootball is related to two players in particular. He says, is a player like Dino Islamovic capable of scoring 20 plus for Rosenborg? And then also, what do we think of Delanley back at Viking? I don't know if you want to field the first question there.
Yeah, I mean, I'll just go to Delanley. I like that player, and didn't work out for him at Rosenborg mostly because of injuries, but was a really good technical player there, has roots in Viking, and do you know what? He's sort of the player they need if they want to sort of maintain and build their squad up again to become that regular Eliteserien top 6 side. It adds a bit of quality to the team, so really good signing. Now, Islamovic, I'll be honest with you, you'll know him better than me, but he doesn't really feel like the sort of striker of sufficient quality that Rosenborg need. I mean, I don't know what you think to that.
Yeah, it's an interesting deal, actually. It's not actually been completed yet. It's not been announced anyway by Rosenborg. But it is one that's caught my eye for sure. I mean, this is a player who was linked to your team, Steve, Leeds United. A lot of links in the summer window to clubs in England. I think Middlesbrough were also linked, Hull City. And there was a lot of rumours that he would move on. But it never transpired. I think, to be honest, if I'm being totally honest here, I think scouts went to watch him and they weren't that impressed. He went through a bit of a rough patch just around the time when he was getting a lot of interest. He had about 3 or 4 weeks where he didn't really do too much. And I think, to be honest, I reckon there might have been some decision makers in the stadium ready to maybe pull the trigger and sign him. And he just went off the boil a little bit for Östersund around that time and kind of tailed off a bit, really. Whether that's because of the players around him and just the general situation at Östersund, or whether that's because maybe he's not quite able to handle it. Who knows? I like the player. I think he has potential. I mean, 20 goals is a bit of a big ask in terms of, I mean, if you look at it, the last 3 seasons, only Broven and one other has scored 20 goals. Frank Bolly last year was 18. The year before that, I think 17 was the top scorer. So 20 is a bit of an ask. But I think the positives about Islamovic, he's a bit of a target man. Physically, he's very good. He's good with the ball at his feet as well, quite creative. What I noticed last season is he created a lot of chances for teammates that they kind of missed. So he has that ability to link play, and I think Norway probably is an interesting step for him. To go to a team that can be challenging in Europe and that kind of thing, that might be the next reasonable step for him. It looks like his opportunity to go to the Championship is over now. So he's going to have to think of a sideways or slightly higher move, maybe by getting out of Östersund. So yeah, I mean, I think he can score sort of 10 to 15. Whether he can score 20 goals in Norway and be the main man at Rosenborg remains to be seen for me. But he does have some potential. And just an interesting one to note on that with Rosenborg, they've hired a new sporting director from Sweden, Mikael Dorsin, who I remember him as a Championship manager legend. I always used to sign him as a bit of a utility player in the Champ Man, or I think of the old days of a Championship manager. So he's the new sporting director at Rosenborg, and he will be probably looking at the Swedish market. So this might be the first of a few Swedish players to head to Rosenborg in the coming season, maybe.
Yeah, they've got to get the recruitment right, Rosenborg, and I quite like the idea that they're looking within Scandinavia to recruit, because I think if you're not careful, you can go. You're looking further afield, it can be a risk, can't it? But look, you look at last year, Molde signed Ui Omowanfo for about a decent fee, about $1 million, I think. And ultimately, that was a signing. He was one of the best scorers in the Eliteserien, and that signing worked out for them, didn't it? Because he did the job for Molde as well. So why not still look within Scandinavia, or even look within the Eliteserien itself? If this example, if they signed Turger Berven and the same Berven turned up in 2020, he'd get him 20 goals. I'll tell you now.
Yeah, I mean, with Islamovic, I think he would do well he would do well in Norway. He's that kind of player that I think he would do well. but 20 goals is I suppose a big ask. But yeah, I think he'd be a good signing for Rosenborg, in my opinion.
And we also got a couple of questions from Joe Gold. And first of all, he asks, can Norway qualify for the Euros? I'll be honest, Joe, I'm not even sure who they've got in their playoff matches. Is it Serbia or someone like that? I'm not sure. I just don't really follow international football that much until it comes up to... But I'll tell you what, Norway have got the talent on paper now. They're quite an exciting side, and I would love to see them qualify. With Haaland in there, Odegaard, guys like that. It'd be nice to see them, wouldn't it? And then a couple of questions about Sweden. Will a new manager mean a fresh opportunity for Roman Gaul at Malmö? And who is the clearest candidate for the new manager there at MFF? And of course, we lost Uwe Rosler, didn't we? Second place finished not good enough, despite progression in the Europa League. Was he sacked, or did he walk himself?
Well, before we come to Uwe Rosler, it's been all change at Malmö, really. They've got a new name for their stadium, the Eliteserien Stadium from next season. The name will change. A bit of a commercial deal, I think, there, which will give them maybe a little bit more money in their coffers. They've also got the issue of Zlatan Ibrahimovic at their stadium, and his statue is not doing too well at the moment. It's being vandalized pretty much every evening at the moment. Toilet seats being thrown on it, and his nose was cut off at one point, and it was graffitied, and at one point it was a bit unsavory. Some not very nice abuse spray painted onto it because of the fact that he's invested in Hammarby. He's become a shareholder in Hammarby, which is a big move for a Malmo legend who has a statue outside the stadium. It's not gone down well at all, to be honest. It's all change at MFF at the moment. And of course, as you mentioned there, Uwe Rosler has left. Kind of mutual, but I think kind of also, I think Rosler, to be honest, I think he wanted out, from what I can understand. He claimed that he couldn't get the club to where the chairman wants to be, so maybe there's a bit of a back story there, maybe a bit of a falling out. But he's also said he hasn't got a new job yet. I think he put the feelers out for a few jobs in England, if I'm honest. There were a few championship jobs that came available, which there were rumours that Rosler was in for them. And my feeling is that perhaps he's looked for a way out, maybe. And Malmo have probably not responded to that too well, especially in the middle of the Europa League battle, and obviously with the way the season went. This is, in terms of expectations, probably the biggest team in Sweden. They expect to win the league, and in 2 seasons now they've not done it. Last year they had the excuse of Magnus Persson, who had been sacked midway through the season, and Rosler came in and changed things well and picked up very well. But this year they had 1 goal, and that was to win the league, and they've not really done it. He says it's his decision, and he had discussions with the sporting director Daniel Andersson, and then they decided to part ways. I think he wants to change. I think he's probably a bit fed up with Swedish football, and he's managed at a high level, hasn't he? And I think he wants to probably go back to a higher level, maybe. But it will always be a little bit of a sore point that he's not won the title at Malmo, which is, considering they've dominated in the past sort of 5 to 10 years. He leaves as maybe, I wouldn't say a failure, but he leaves probably with unfinished business. And he's not done exactly what he was asked to do. Let's put it that way. So, an interesting one in terms of who's going to replace him. Well, Freddie Ljungberg was linked, obviously the Arsenal interim manager at one point. But he's now been named as part of Mikel Arteta's staff. So I don't think Ljungberg's going to go, although I would have quite liked to see that, to be honest. I think that would have been a massive thing for the league. There's a few other names thrown into the hat, but I'm not entirely sure if any of them are really that believable at the moment. No one's been announced. And in terms of Roman Gaul, well, he wasn't working out for him under Rosler, that's for sure. He'd fallen out with Rosler. He wasn't really getting much of a look in, considering his quality. And I think for him, he's probably looking at it and thinking, yeah, I'm pretty up for that. I'm pretty up for a change and maybe a chance to impress a new manager. There's no real player. There's no one else really I can name. There's a lot of rumours, as you'd expect, but no one really has been the clear candidate yet. So we'll wait and see.
It's funny. I feel that the club actually made progress under Rosler in his period in charge of the club, and I really feel perhaps long term this era here will set them up for. It's certainly set them up financially, hasn't it? In terms of the Europa League runs they've had, stuff like that. They've got great resources there. You could just see them really dominating a title in one of the next couple of years, couldn't you? If they make the right appointment next, really, that's how I see it from the outside, anyway.
I think his win ratio is actually very, very good. If you look at over the course of the 2 seasons, he's done really well. And to be honest, they're one penalty away from winning the title. I mean, they've lost that by 1 point. They had a better goal. They scored more goals, conceded fewer goals. They had the best XG in the league. They had the best XG against in the league. So really, in terms of statistics, they were probably the best team in the league, really. But the forwards have let them down. I think they like I say, they've missed penalties. When one of those penalties going in, they'd have won the title. Malmo Djurgården game itself, they missed a penalty in that match when Djurgården beat them 1-0 away. And if they'd scored that, they would be champions. So it really was fine margins at the end of it all. As we say, it was a 3-horse race on the final day. This is, we're talking tight margins here. So, it has come down to maybe a little bit of bad luck for Uwe Rosler to a certain extent. But I think he should have seen out the Euros in terms of the Europa League in the next round. But I think that's what makes me think that he probably didn't really fancy it, to be honest. I think he probably didn't really want to go into the new season. And you don't want someone, he could have stuck around to the summer, next summer maybe, and, look towards trying to, do more. But I think he's just thought to himself he doesn't fancy it, which I wouldn't be surprised if he gets a new job pretty soon, maybe. And I think he'll have the feelers out for sure. And by the way, just to let you know, Norway do have Serbia in the playoffs, just so you're aware. And the playoff final, they'd play the winner of Scotland-Israel. Yeah,
well, they'd win that final, wouldn't they? I mean, Scotland are awful. Israel aren't much cop either. So really beat Serbia, I think you can say that they're going to be doing it. But that is easier said than done, isn't it? Really tough game there. So yeah, that pretty much wraps up all the questions, and as I say, wraps up our personal involvement in 2019. And we wish everyone all the best. We've got a little special treat to round off this episode, where I join up with Paul the Northman, who is a great Viking fan. He gives us a special account of the cup final win there in Oslo, and also Viking season as a whole. So a bonus episode there from a great guest coming up to finish off the episode. And of course, on the Nordic Football Podcast Norwegian season review, we must talk about the cup, and the NM Cupen winners this year were Viking. And joining us on the show is Paul the Northman, who many of you will recognise from Twitter. He was actually at the game, at the cup final. Thanks for coming on the show, Paul. Delighted to have you on here.
It's an absolute pleasure. Thank you for inviting me along.
And, many of you regular listeners will know that I'm not the greatest fan of any cup competitions, actually, certainly domestic ones. And in true fashion, I sadly missed the final of the NM Cupen. I was Christmas shopping in IKEA. So, but luckily, Paul, you were there. And I watched the highlights of this game. First of all, you are, you've been living in Norway, I think, for about 6-7 years now, and you've developed quite a strong bond with the club Viking, a really passionate supporter.
Yeah, I think when you move to a new country, you've got to find your home to watch football. And luckily for me, one of my friends took me along to Viking just after I moved here, and my blood turned blue, which was nice. And it's been a journey. It's growing up a Newcastle supporter. You don't think you can punish yourself anymore. Then you start supporting Viking and realise you can. So, yeah, it's been eventful.
Yeah, you certainly had some highs and lows, and we'll talk about that more in a minute. But to this cup final then, and a really exciting day for both sets of supporters, really, because, it's none of the really traditional big teams that are in this final. The favourites for the league and everything, Molde, Rosenborg, they were knocked out long ago. But, Viking had a really strong season in the Eliteserien. Haugesund had a good campaign as well and mixed in with a great European run. So, it certainly felt to me heading into the match that it was kind of fitting that one of these sides would win the trophy. What was it like pre-match? I mean, I'm sure there was a real buzz there getting into Oslo from both sets of fans.
It was a strange weekend. If you think we filled the stadium out, home and away supporters, as you want to call it, and coming over from the west, both teams coming from Rogaland, it was interesting because walking around Oslo on the Saturday, you were seeing faces which you know from back home, and we took over Oslo is the best way to describe it. It was just a sea of blue and white from both sides, and the buzz leading up to the game was strange because Haugesund were almost like a little brother to Viking as we were singing during the game, and the atmosphere is that of a friendly atmosphere right up until kickoff. Then we hated them. So the pre-game, I mean, it snowed on the day of the match, so there was the Christmas atmosphere, you could say, leading up to the game, and we did a full lap of the stadium before we went in, and it's so friendly. It's the atmosphere between fans. There was families which had half Viking, half Haugesund. There was friends who one was a Hogs and one was a Viking fan. They were talking before they went their separate ways into the ground.
Would you say Viking supporters outnumbered the Haugesund ones? I mean, I would expect that personally, knowing.
Oh, without a doubt. Without a doubt. We packed one side, and then one end behind the goal was completely packed, and then we packed the corners as well, where Haugesund only really filled behind the goal. It was definitely, you would almost say 2-1, if not bigger, to be honest with you.
Yeah, that doesn't really surprise me. Certainly Viking, no disrespect to Haugesund, they are a much bigger club, really, historically, and in terms of supporter numbers, really. But the actual match itself then, and I watched the highlights of this, and just looking at the expected goals numbers for the games, Viking 1.53 expected goals, of which literally half of that was the penalty, and Haugesund 0.9 expected goals. I think their biggest chance, well, according to Wisecout data anyway, was a Martin Samuelsson header, 67th minute. But by and large, this was a tight contest. The pitch looked, it looked cold, a bit frozen maybe. I mean, I know it started at midday, and I think next year they're going to change this. The cup final is going to be at the end of October rather than in December. But a really tight contest throughout, it seemed from the highlights, Paul. Would you go along with that?
I mean, I'm kind of surprised they managed to put highlights together, to be honest with you. It wasn't the best game of football, without a shadow of a doubt. And if I was a Haugesund fan travelling home after that, you would be very, very disappointed. The header you mentioned, we actually thought it went in at first, especially because their fans started cheering. So it was a very clear-cut chance. I really did think they were going to score that. They started the better. The first 10 minutes, we were passing so poor. Giving the ball away after one or two passes. They had a chance, whipped it across from the left side quite early on, and very close to connection from the attacker. But we slowly came into it in the first half, and by the 35th minute, we started to get a couple of corners, get a couple of chances where we looked like we were maybe going to sneak a goal before half-time, but we just couldn't test their goalkeeper, and it was becoming very frustrating. And I think the atmosphere showed that at half-time. I mean, the only shining light through the game for me was Kalman up top, who the ball just stuck to him in terms of everything he was winning. The problem was people weren't getting around him. So I feel like we were very lucky to get the penalty when we got it early in the second half, 51st minute. It was definitely a foul. I mean, you can't cut across somebody like that in the box. But the minute that goal went in, oh my days, we celebrated, to say the least.
Yeah, I thought it was a penalty, a definite penalty for me. And in the build-up, I don't know how Viking didn't actually score. It was the one sort of really big chance it felt in the whole match, really. I think Haugesund had a bit of a scramble earlier on in the first half. But the penalty goes in, and we've got this is a fantastic audio clip from you now, Paul, that we're going to play, and when the goal goes in.
Come on, Trippage, come on.
I mean, I love this clip. It's you've got a couple of. I can hear you just before the penalty's taken. Go on, Trippage. Go on, Trippage. And it's brilliant. But that's the whole thing. That's the whole drama of a cup final. And you get the goal. And yeah, there was not really that many moments of alarm. It certainly didn't seem on the highlights anyway. The header, Ostbo made one good save, didn't he? But,
unbelievable save. Unbelievable save. It really was. It again from where we were, the other end of the stadium. It looked like it was going in that top corner, and it was a fantastic save from him, without a doubt. 33 years old and getting up like that, fantastic.
Yeah, I mean, I'm going to talk a little bit about him later, actually. But full-time whistle goes, 1-0 victory. I mean, you guys must be absolutely delighted there, and all the Viking fans. What a way to end the season!
It was a fantastic end to the season. I mean, we all had our flags waving, our scarves held high. It was just a moment that, personally, I'm never going to forget. It was unbelievable. It was to be able to enjoy the moment with a very good friend, and to be able to enjoy the first cup victory whilst I've been in this country. It's just been amazing. It's really hard to put that into words. It's a special moment. And afterwards, I held my phone up for a video clip of the singing at the end, and I just forget it was in my hand. You know, you just get lost in the moment, and I just soaked it all up. It was fantastic. Yeah,
and it really actually culminates what's been a great season overall for Viking. Fifth place finish there. And, it's interesting because pre-season, and this season, Buda Glimt have kind of been the success story, haven't they? Second place, and everyone predicted them to go down. And if it weren't for them, though, Viking would be the really big overachievers, wouldn't they? I think kind of under the radar. I mean, I predicted them. I certainly didn't predict Viking to go down. I think I had them about 11th or 12th, though. And I would imagine quite a lot of people had them in the same sort of position. All the talk going into the season was that they couldn't defend in the Obosligaen, and they only got promoted thanks to just outscoring teams. But the defence actually performed surprisingly well. Fifth place finish, had an incredible run, certainly sort of midsummer onwards. I mean, how much credit does the manager deserve, do you think, this season?
I mean, I think the manager just, Bjarne's, he was at the club in the 90s, manager, to come back in 2018 and just to do what he's done. I mean, as you say, nobody expected coming up after winning promotion last season. We were talking before the season started that as long as we survive, even if it's through the playoffs, we would be delighted, and just see what we can do from there. And bear in mind, we lost one of our best defenders to a full season injury right at the start of the season as well. In Anderson, it was soul destroying to see him get injured, because he, on loan from Reading, he was an absolute man mountain. So to lose him, we really did feel the worst. But the defensively, we've been fantastic. I mean, the plus 13 goal difference in the league is really good. We lost as many games this season as we did in our promotion winning season last year. The only difference was we only drew one game last year, where we drew 8 this season. As you say, if it wasn't for Buda Glimt, we'd be the surprise team of the season without a shadow of a doubt. And it's just, I mean, we're going to be in Europe in 2020. it's insane. And I think you can't help but give a knighthood to Bjorn a bit. Why not? Absolute legend. So he's never going to lose that. He's always going to be known as the coach who won the cup in 2019.
Yeah, I mean, certainly the end of the season. I think just 2 defeats since the 11th of August, and I kind of let you off those because at that point the cup quarterfinal, semi-finals, and the final was obviously in the minds of the players. There was an incredible rotation system which I couldn't believe actually worked. It's staggering, really, but fair play. And I just want to talk about one really key player this year, Zlatko Tripic, who, he's certainly in my Eliteserien team of the year, and we've got a blog going up from Wisecout, and I've even put him in the combined Allsvenskan and Eliteserien team of the year. He's been that good. But captain, inspirational leader. Obviously had a great year in the Obost again. Did you expect him to make the step up again to the Eliteserien so strongly? And why is he exactly so good?
I did expect him to step up because I didn't understand why he was with us in the second tier in terms of he's way too good for that level. But as the song says, he comes from Lyngdal, so he wanted to be home, coming back to Viking, and he's so good because he scares defenders. He doesn't think about anything else while getting the ball and running with it. There was a point in the final where he picked the ball up near our corner flag, not near their corner flag, and he had no interest in just kicking the ball long. He tried to run through the whole team. It's just what he does. He gets the ball and he runs with it. Now, maybe you would say a team who's coming up into the division, you need to have 11 men who are going to fight back. They're going to fight forward and work as a team. You don't want someone who is almost, you would say, selfish. But with Tripic, we have someone who is selfish, and it's fantastic. It's honestly, he's a game changer. He's a game changer, and that's what's made us a top half team. The biggest thing we need to do in the winter now is secure Kalman on loan as an actual signing. So he's been on loan as somebody who wins them headers, who holds the ball up. It just helps Tripic in terms of a link up. I'm nervous. I'm nervous for the winter to see what we do.
Yeah, because you might actually lose players this winter. There's been some shining younger players. Bjørskjeld's done well. Torstvedt, can't see him lasting too long there in Stavanger.
Top goal scorer this season as well.
I mean, Tripic himself might be even on the radar of some teams. Always a little bit older, and I suspect you probably will keep him. And one of the players I want to talk to you about before we move on. It's a real mystery to me, this one. Ivan Ustbo in goal, who I've got to be honest, I've never ever rated him one bit personally. And when it springs to mind historically, just crap goalkeeper. Something always goes wrong. A bit like sort of, what David James used to be like, Calamity James, that sort of mistake used to come in. Although David James had a lot of the good qualities, to be fair. But I mean, even last season in the promotion decider, he made a massive cock up, didn't he? And I was expecting a horror show from him this year. But to be brutally honest, I actually have him down as the second best on form, the goalkeeper in the Eliteserien this year, behind Sandberg. Really, he's been sensational. I can't work it out, Paul. I don't know whether a fan who knows the team better might be able to shed some light on why he's been so good this year.
Well, if I could send you a picture of my notes, he reminds me of David James.
Yeah.
He's a good goalkeeper. His footwork is left to question. But in terms of, as you say, he does make the odd mistake, and that is a worry. But our problem is our backup goalkeeper in Wisner. I don't think he's any better. I mean,
it's terrible as well. Well,
yeah, we don't have the depth. And I mean, in the warm up, Osper he dropped a couple, and one of them he dropped it literally into the goal. And I was thinking, there's been a lot of snow. The ground is a bit slippy. I'm a bit concerned, but as soon as the match started, he was confident, apart from one clearance, which I don't know if it made into the highlights or not. But he had a clearance which hit the attacker's head and almost went in the back of the net. But apart from that, he had a good game, and I think we can't take that away from him. You know, he stepped up when he had to step up.
Yeah, I think we have to really absolutely praise him. Even the biggest critics like myself, historically, have to praise him right to the limit this year. He's been brilliant. Let's talk a little about yourself before we end this interview, Paul. And you can follow Paul the Northman on Twitter at @TN_the Northman. And Englishman in Norway, football and golf fan, former semi-pro football manager with Bjørkreim EL. So tell us a bit about yourself, how you got into Norway and the managerial career you had down there in the lower leagues.
Yeah, so I moved to Norway due to meeting a lady and deciding it was a nicer life opportunity here than in England because I was struggling to find work at the time. And yeah, 2016, I joined Bjørkreim in pre-season, a week before the season started to start playing. And the next thing I know, the manager didn't turn up. And because I'm that overconfident, cocky Englishman, I thought I'd just step forward on my first day of training and said, I'll take training today. And then, yeah, a week later, we started the season and somehow I was still in the job. And the team had struggled. They went from the 5th tier Division 4 down to the 7th tier Division 6, pretty much back to back. But basically getting absolutely hammered every single week. And we started the season all right, and 2016 was a struggle. Luckily, I got told very early on that no team was going to get relegated that season due to a problem the division below. Which was lucky because we still finished bottom. But second half of the season, we really started to turn things around and I started to almost find my feet. We started to pick up some points. And in 2017, we finished mid-table. 2018, we just missed out on promotion by a couple of points. And I developed by far the youngest team in the league. I think our average age was like 22, 21. So it was a really, really good experience. But halfway through 2019, unfortunately, I decided to step down. It wasn't the club's decision. They wanted me to stay on, but we were bottom half, struggling. I felt like they needed a fresh voice in to try to kick them on. We lost a few players to other clubs and moving off to university with a couple of them.
So Division 6 football in Norway, how would you compare that to sort of 11 in England, and what is it like? So I don't know whether you call it grassroots football in Norway at that level. Probably not quite as low as that, but what is the standard like?
I mean, I would at that level the standard is it's very mixed. I would say the next step up, if we've won promotion up to Division 5, that's where it really kicks on. You know, it really becomes okay. Training 4 times a week. Everyone's 100% dedicated. Where at Division 6, you've got maybe 12, 13, 14 dedicated players who are training 3 times a week. Then you've got a few who they come once a week, and then the other 2 times they've got something they've got to do at home. So in terms of comparison, it's very hard to compare because, as you know, and probably everyone listening knows, the English league system has so much depth. You have clubs down in the 7th tier, 6th tier who are considering all are professional. There's just so much depth. I mean, you could say it's level 9, level 10, around that level. Maybe, I'm not too sure. You would honestly have to just put them all on a field and see how it went. But if you think one division up from us in 2019 was Stavanger IF, who before the war were in the top flight. So there's some big teams down there, without a shadow of a doubt. Yeah,
I mean, just 3 divisions above you would be Fredrikstad, of course. who perhaps the biggest name down there in the lower tiers of Norwegian football these days. Did you enjoy the role there? 3.5 years in the job? You must have got a lot out of it.
I loved it. I learned a lot. I got a lot of praise, a lot of attention in terms of, since I've left, I've had quite a few job offers, which has been really, really nice from many different areas of Norway, which has been fantastic and well appreciated. So I loved it. Going to training 3-4 times a week, and when I wasn't training, I was watching other teams playing their matches. It was a good experience, and definitely something I'm going to get back into, but only when the time and the club feels right.
Yeah. And off the field itself, you're quite a renowned YouTuber, aren't you? I do believe, especially with a lot of the Football Manager blogs that you put up.
Yeah, I like to keep myself busy. Something to do on an evening. It's a hobby of mine. I like to video edit. I like to create and just see what I can put together and see where it takes me. Yeah,
it's very popular these days, and I don't know many football fans who don't really get the Football Manager version. I've already got it myself this year. I get it to aid my database, and of course end up playing somewhere along the line. So keep up the good work there on the videos, Paul, and it's great to hear from you on the Nordic Football Podcast. Thanks for joining us.
No, my pleasure. I appreciate it. Thank you for having me on.
Yes, thanks very much again to Paul, the Northman. And just to round things off now, what are your overriding thoughts for 2019 then, John?
It's been a really good year. I've really enjoyed this season on the podcast. We passed 50 episodes, haven't we, Steve? Which is a bit of a personal milestone. I think we've had a good season in terms of guests. Don't know if you have a favourite guest, any listeners, or if there's anything that you've enjoyed this year particularly. I'd love to hear any comments on that. But yeah, from my point of view, Malmo have made it to the knockout stages of the Europa League. We had a 3-way title race, gone down to the final day of the season in the final 45 minutes, which was beyond thrilling. I really, really enjoyed the title race. It was a brilliant year for that. The relegation battle, Falkenberg getting out of it, the interview with Hasse Eklund was very insightful, and just in terms of how they escaped. Drama to the end. Norway as well, drama to the end. I suppose the title race there wasn't too big, but for a while, Bodø Glimt looked like they could maybe challenge. So, the big boys haven't had it their way. Rosenborg and Malmo. I've really enjoyed this season. I don't know about you, Steve.
Yeah. You know what? This time of year, it just feels a million miles away, doesn't it? You can hardly envision, the middle of summer when the two leagues are banging operation, the really light nights up there. I certainly enjoyed it. It had a lot of dramas in its own different ways, and roll on 2020. Really looking forward to it, and there's loads more to come from the Nordic Football Podcast going forwards.
Most definitely. And, we have to give a special thanks, by the way, before we wrap up this show to, let's name a few names, shall we? Tor Todderson, Gunhild
Toldness,
Simo Valakari, Sean Constable, the main man, Sean Constable, Henrik Pedersen, Amin Askar, Vegard Hansen, of course, Asmund Bjorkan of Bodø Glimt, Hasse Eklund, and Lecky James, the special guests on this year's podcast. Personally, as I say, it's been a really insightful one. If you can listen to some of those episodes, the Vegard Hansen one I thought was fantastic. Steve, your insights there with him. Henrik Pedersen, his talk and his comments on the psychology of football and the human side of things was also very interesting. I think it's been a really good year for us, and I hope you've all enjoyed it as well. Don't forget, please, if you've enjoyed the show and you like it going forward, please do subscribe, tell people that retweet the podcast, and obviously we do survive on the oxygen of your approval, I guess, and your enjoyment. So we'll do it for you, and I hope you enjoy it. So we're going to continue in the year to come. For now, though, Steve, I think you're going to go and have some turkey sandwiches. I'm going to pull another Belgian beer out of the freezer, or the fridge, sorry. And let's listen to the Northman. And well done to you, Steve. I've enjoyed the year with you in your company. A bit grumpy at times, but overall, I think you've deep down you've enjoyed it.
Yes. So, yes. Well, thanks very much. I've enjoyed it as well, JF, my old friend, and very much look forward to 2020 with you. So take care, everyone, and we'll see you again very soon. Goodbye.
Goodbye, everyone.